All right, fantastic. Hello everyone, and welcome to another podcast from Karnataka and Kannadigas in the UK. But also, it's from Karnataka and Kannadigas, but it is meant for anybody from India or anybody else who can also benefit from the content we are producing. From Karnataka, and welcome to this entertaining and educative podcast, I'll say, because we are going to be talking about PhD, what it takes in you to do a PhD, what's the driver, why somebody decides to go for a PhD, how is life during your PhD years, well, pre-PhD, during PhD, and what do you expect after completing your PhD. Of course, you get the doctorate title, which I think many of you are aware. And that's a very prestigious title to have every time your salutation will not be MR, Mr. anymore. You will be calling yourself a doctor, which I think is an esteemed title to have. So let's dive into our podcast today. And as I welcome our guests, so we have four speakers. We may expect one more speaker to come in, but I think right now we have Vadhiraj. Vadhiraj, if you can just wave, and each of them will introduce themselves in some time. Shreyas, hello Shreyas, if you can just wave to everyone. Hello, hi, and Raj, of course, you can see the beautiful English weather. It was very nice and sunny for the last few days. I think it's just today that we're seeing a bit of cloud. I think 2 or 3 weeks you've seen quite intense heat in the UK. So welcome Raj, and hopefully we'll get to see a lot more of your background. There seems to be some interesting things happening. I could see a dog walking. I could see hikers. He's going to tell us how he manages to do his research in the park, in nature. Maybe he's one of those people where the apple falls on his tree and he decides something new, and all of us have to study that in our educated years. But he will tell us more about that. And we have Ullas as well. Hi, Ullas, if you can just wave as well. Again, Ullas has been he's been the driver. He's been wanting to do this educative podcast, of course, with the other speakers as well. He will enlighten us on, why this is a good session to have, what you can gain out of it, and also hear experience from each one of you. Okay, so we do have a few slides. I am going to put them up on screen. Why don't we start with a few introductions? Should we go from Vadhiraj? I think I'll just follow the screen format, if that's fine. Vadhiraj, you want to go with your introduction? I'll bring up the slides. I think I need to share that, so let me do that. Yeah, if you can start talking.
Hi everybody. I'm Vadhiraj Srinivas. I'm a research fellow at Coventry University. So my specialization is road accidents, especially to decide what happens after a collision. So I work towards something called as Vision Zero. So the idea is to have zero deaths by road traffic collisions, not zero collisions, but zero deaths because of them. So the Vision Zero divides the whole collision into 5 stages. The last stage is post-impact care. That's where my specialization is. I look into how to help EMS, how to help police to with forensics for EMS to decide what kind of injuries are there, what kind of treatment is required. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, shall we go to Ullas next? I do apologize, the presentation is coming up. Just give us a few seconds for that. We will bring through the slides of each individual as well, so you know a little more about each of the speakers. I'll ask the speakers to go about their introductions, but till then, I think if each one of you can just tell us a little about yourself, your hobbies, what you're doing, etc., while we get this presentation up and running. Ullas, over to you.
So good afternoon, everyone. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡ ಇದು ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆ್ಯಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಇಂದ ಅಥವಾ ಕನ್ನಡ ಡಯಾಸ್ಪೋರಾ ಇಂದ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. So my name is Ullas Shivaprakash. I work in University of Birmingham. So I work for a UK's national laboratory, which is called National Buried Infrastructure Facility. So I develop machine learning algorithms to develop a statistical framework for buried infrastructure. So what is the research is about is basically so we have roads which the traffic flows basically. So underneath we have the ground in which the infrastructures, which is cables and pipes, are buried. So if you can see, like, there's so much of interaction between the surface, ground, and the buried infrastructure. So we have large number of data sets which has already been there. So I'm developing machine learning algorithms so that we can establish a statistical framework to predict the failures in all the three infrastructures. So that's my basic research area. So before coming to University of Birmingham, I was working in Robert Bosch in Bangalore as a software engineer in automotive active safety systems. So that's my brief introduction. So now I'm in University of Birmingham. So whatever you see is like I'm developing a AI tool or a machine learning algorithms for buried infrastructure by integrating various sensor data. So that's my brief introduction. So yeah, thank you. The thing which you're seeing is me. So yeah, that's my exactly my lab where the picture has been taken. So that's a picture of the national lab of UK. So it's called National Buried Infrastructure Facility, where we do real-time simulations of the actual scenarios what we actually get in the real world. So we see how traffic loading can impact on the buried pipes, and the reverse way, like how a water leak or a pipe leak could affect the surface infrastructure. So we simulate all of these in this UK lab. So I'm part of this lab. I'm currently in my final year of my PhD, almost finishing up. So soonly, like, I'll be finishing my PhD. So thank you very much.
Vivek? Yeah. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I was mute. I'm
Vivek,
back on.
I can't
I
hear
hope
you.
everyone can hear me now. Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, I was on mute. I was on mute and I completely forgot about that. Can you hear me now? Yeah, good. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So excellent. Thanks, Ulas. No, very, very interesting piece of work. AI, robotics, VLSI, some very niche, high-tech work that he's doing. So, of course, we will hear more about what Ulas has done in his previous life before joining PhD. What motivated him to take up PhD, and how does he foresee his life after completion. As he said, he's in a final year, so I'm sure he's looking at the other side of the border now. So we'd like to hear more about how his journey has been and how he thinks his future will be here on with all the interesting work that he has done. Just quickly move back to Dr. Vadhiraj. He has introduced. Dr. Vadhiraj, if you can just quickly touch upon your introduction again, focus upon your patents. As you said, you have a few patents that you've been working on. Just tell us a little bit about those patents, how a PhD and patents, how they go hand in hand, and what's been your contribution. Back to you, Dr. Vadhiraj.
So patents and papers are byproduct of a PhD. So the focus is more about research. So while I was analyzing the data to see how we can help EMS with injuries. When a paramedics comes to a collision site, a lot is happening. There's a lot of blood. People are screaming. They don't know what to do. But sometimes, while they are really good at what they do, sometimes there are certain injuries where they have not manifested. If there is an internal bleed in the brain, it takes about 48 hours to about 6 days for it to manifest. And if it is not treated then and there, people can die because of this. About 16% of people die due to head injury in 28 days from the time of collision, where it was not diagnosed in the UK. So it's a big number. So the idea was to see how we can help, and one of the key factor which was missing is the speed of the car when the collision occurred. And while it seems very easy to determine, it's cars have these something called as a black box, which is an EDR. When there is a collision, they keep recording what is happening. But because of GDPR, the police cannot simply access it without the consent of the driver. So we wanted to find something which can be used retrospectively, but which would not need any consent from the driver, and that's where the patent comes in. So it uses a simple 2D tracking system where if you know the profile of the car, if you know the height and weight of the pedestrian, it can actually track the impact points. So if there is a deformation, it can actually say what would be the speed of the car when to have these kind of damages on the vehicle. And that's where this tracking system is what happened to be a patent.
Very interesting. As they always say, make sure if you're riding a bike, wear your helmet. Make sure if you're driving a car, always wear your seatbelt, because a head injury may seem like nothing initially, but as Dr. Vadhiraj mentioned, it could be something catastrophic within 48 hours, as he rightly said, and death within a month, 28 days, as he mentioned. So yeah, so make sure you are safe. But of course, Dr. Vadhiraj will tell us more about the work that he's been doing, his PhD journey, and of course, he's going to give us some safety tips as well as drivers on roads in India, in the UK, or anywhere in the world. How do we make sure we're safe? Any head injury could be something related to kids, a normal head injury. What do we need to do? And from a technology perspective, what is he doing so that any death or any catastrophe is prevented? So we'll hear a lot more about his interesting work. And again, welcome, Dr. Vadhiraj. It's great to have you on this show. Okay, so we will move to Raj, who is, again, now he's got a profile picture with a wonderful picturesque background. And I think to match it up, he's trying to create the same. I think it's just the tree, Raj. Probably you need to move to a surrounding without the tree. Then I think the background will look exactly like your photo here. Can you tell us more? Can you tell us where you are? And can you tell us a little more about your...
Sure. So currently I'm in Danes Dyke. So this is a beach area here. So we have two cliffs on either sides here, and then there's a beach, and you can see there are so many children, dogs, walking here. Picturesque place. This is in Yorkshire. This is in the northeastern part of UK. So I'm here right now on a holiday. So you can see like my the profile picture also is one background from Scotland, and now this is Yorkshire. So I think I'm enjoying a bit here. So I'm doing PhD plus, I'm getting a chance to travel and enjoy some beautiful nature out here. So yeah, I mean, to give a bit of background, so I'm currently doing PhD in Imperial College, London. Started in 2023. So I'm in the second year of this 5-year program. So more about that coming up. Like, yeah, I mean, PhD is generally 3 to 4 years, but mine is a 5-year program. So maybe I can talk about it a bit later. So, but giving a bit of background. So I'm a software engineer and a manager before I quit and started doing PhD. So currently I'm in the management and entrepreneurship division. So I study how companies strategize or startups strategize and develop technologies, and how do they get influenced. It's a bidirectional relationship between technology development and startups. And startups strategically maneuver, like how do they want to develop technology and integrate with other existing technologies out there, and basically innovate. There is competition, collaboration, and there is AI which has come up, which is there are confusions about open source versus closed source, how much to open versus keep them closed and make revenue out of it, and so on. So these are some complications that I'm studying right now. So yeah, I mean that's the journey about so far right now, and maybe I can share about my experience. So yeah, I wanted to thank everyone here, like to have me here on this live stream right now. So back to you, Vivek.
Excellent, excellent. Welcome. And as Raj has in his introduction, he has over 18 years of experience. He's from Nama Bengaluru, studied in BMS College. I'm sure all of you know BMS College around Bull Temple Road in Bangalore. So Bangalore boy. He's then worked in the US, studied, worked in the US, Amazon, NetApp, Nokia. As you can see, some big tech companies under his belt. He did a master's. He was not satisfied. He was still curious about answers and research. And now he's in the UK in Imperial College doing his PhD currently. So it's a very, very interesting journey. All right, welcome, Raj, and we look forward to hearing more about your journey and what motivated you to do a PhD. How's it been so far, etc., etc. We will move on to our next guest. All right, Shreyas. All right, so Shreyas, he's got the cool dude attitude there. So tell us, Shreyas. So which beach is that? Is that in the UK or is it
That's
somewhere
actually
outside?
that was in Andaman and Nicobar when I went home this December.
Very nice.
But
When you going off topic, and given how tourism is growing in India, would you recommend Andaman and Nicobar
oh
to
yeah,
tourists or other?
100%. It was one of the best beaches I've ever seen. One of the cleanest as well. And if you're someone who enjoys diving, you should definitely go. I mean, I didn't get the opportunity to go for it because, well, my parents didn't want to dive, but I didn't want to do it alone.
Right.
But I've known a lot of people who have gone for diving trips, and it's like a really fun place to be. And it's a very, I mean, it's always unique to be. I mean, we're living on an island, but that's a different kind of an island, right?
Mm.
It's an island with much better weather for one.
Yeah.
And it's like nice, warm, hot, and like it's actually fun to get into the water. Whereas here, you get into the water and you're still freezing. So, it's a
Excellent.
bit.
And what's the photo before your PhD, during your PhD, after your
No, this was
PhD?
during the PhD. This was like
During the
like
PhD. Great.
5 months back. This was literally this December.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah,
All right. Can you tell us a little more? Go on.
Oh yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I was forced to get a haircut, but that aside, I'm doing a PhD in physics at the University of Edinburgh, and but I'm a bit of an imposter, I would say, because I'm an engineer first, and I still consider myself an engineer. It's just as things happen, sometimes your supervisor might be in a different department, but you're still doing something that is interdisciplinary. So that we can talk about a bit about that later on as well. But also one thing that I've actually noticed is that everybody else on this seems to have a lot of work experience and like a lot of experience in research and industry. But comparatively, I've done none of that. I'm actually like academic degree. There was a gap in between for a year, but that was more to do with COVID than to do with me getting work experience. So I guess my experience would be very different from a lot of the others that would be talking about. But actually about the work, yes, I did my undergrad, my engineering in mechanical in India in BITS, and then that's where I was first introduced to energy storage and material science in general. And I think I had this instant connection where I decided that this is what I really wanted to do. And I got lucky with a few research projects because the experience that I got from those like really confirmed that research is what I wanted to do in the future. And so the first step was getting a master's, well, at least for me, because Imperial was one of the best material science departments in the world, and still continues to be. And I think the exposure that I got to just the kind of different research that happened over there really shaped a lot of things about what I wanted to do in the future, and also gave me the platform and the sort of connections I needed to pursue this PhD that I'm doing right now, which is up north in Edinburgh, where we don't see much sun. But yeah, so the PhD itself is actually computational materials science. And what I'm doing is I'm modeling materials at the atomistic scale, either like using either solving quantum mechanical equations itself to understand what happens at a very fundamental level, or maybe a little bit more like of nanoscale, trying to see well if when we increase temperature, we apply a field, what happens to the magnetic properties? Can we use this in the future for next generation electronics devices? Like, can we get better energy well, energy efficient information storage? Can we store more data, especially with all the AI and data driven stuff going on? It's actually the data storage part is starting to cause more of a problem, and it's also very and like it takes a lot of energy to cool all of these data centers down. So the overarching goals is like maybe we find something that in the future could make things more energy efficient. We can have next generation devices that require less operating energy. But at what I'm doing is still at the fundamental level of all of that, which is how do these materials actually work under different conditions? And we do that with modeling. Yep, and that's kind of about
Excellent.
it.
Welcome, Shreyas. And as he said, a very different profile. He's been into very limited work experience, so that gives us a different angle of how to look at research, how to look at PhD. We do have people who have spent time in the industry, gone back into academia, a kind of a mix of the two. So I think we'll hear different perspectives from different people, or also different fields. We have Dr. Vadhiraj working on something related to injuries. We have Shreyas working on nanotechnology and material science, which is equally, very important in today's tech data-driven industry, and also our mission to go further into space and flying objects, which all need material science and quantum mechanic and things like those, and of course data centers, your mobile devices, which many of us just by all the amount of research on to actually creating those fascinating devices that we hold in our hands or put in our pockets. So yeah, so very varied kind of work across all of our esteemed panel today, and we'll hear more from each one of them on their journey, what exactly they're doing, and learn a lot over the next hour or so. Okay, so sorry, we have done this and quickly. Sorry, Sachin was not able to attend due to some personal issues. Just give me a second. The slide is got stuck here. Apologies. That's right here, but the slide's not moving to the next one. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to quickly run through a number of topics today. So we'll try and keep this session to an hour, 90 minutes where possible. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions a lot of people will have, and you're going to be looking for answers. Of course, we have shared the contacts of each of the speakers. You're free to reach out to them directly. Or, of course, we want you to come back to our sessions as we do a couple more of them in the near future. But what we're going to cover is, firstly, why do a PhD? It's a very basic question. Not a lot of people think about PhD. Some people are determined from a young age that they're going to go on in PhD, or for some people, it's just a eureka moment during their bachelor's and master's saying, this is what I love, and I'm going to pursue a PhD in the future. What is the eligibility? I mean, what should you have studied? Is there a basic minimum amount of grades and kind of work you've done? If you've studied in one certain field, let's say IT, which is quite popular in India, but then you want to move into material science or even business as examples. So what is those bridging gaps that how do you fill them? We will kind of discuss that as well. What kind of PhD? There are different types of PhDs, so we will talk about each of those and what each entails as well. Going about searching for the right PhD, do you look at courses in India? Do you look at courses in the UK? Do you look at courses in the US? What does each of them offer? Global markets, global PhDs, and what they offer and how best to go about it. Of course, having the right professor as well who's guiding you is equally important as well. The whole process of applying for a PhD funding is, of course, very important. You need to sustain, you need your professor to be funding you, university be funding you for your PhD. And then life is set in terms of at least you doing the next few years with your research. So we're going to talk about life during PhD. Is it going to be in a locked room, research, studying all the time? Or, as Raj was mentioning, life is not that bad. It's all about being structured. You can take a time out, visit places across the world, enjoy life, and also work when you need to work in a structured way. We will hear about that journey. And also we'll touch upon what happens after a PhD. Right now we have Dr. Vadhiraj, so he's the most qualified, but I'm sure each one of the speakers as well are also looking at life beyond a PhD. So we will hear how does life change for an individual after completing their PhD. So that's great. And on that note, so let's quickly move to our very first question, as we put together the agenda. So why PhD? Why do I even think about PhD or doing research? Well, what is it that makes you want to do something like this? Let's hear from our speakers. We will start from Dr. Vadhiraj and then go across each of them. If you can share your personal views, and also all our viewers and members, if you can kind of influence them of why doing a PhD is good for their career, what benefits they will get. If you can touch upon that as well, that would be great as well. So let's start with Dr. Vadhiraj.
Thanks. Probably my case is a bit different. So I decided to do a PhD just for the sake of doing it. So I have no other reason. I always wanted to do a PhD, and the project came along, and I chose to do it. Probably, if I really have to pick and choose, the reason would maybe because of the challenge. I've always been told that it's a difficult journey, and you have to redefine how you think, redefine what you do, and maybe that led me to pursue PhD. And I have more to talk about why this specific project, but probably this question is more towards why PhD or why research. So it's more of a challenge. It's more of refining yourself. Are you capable of doing something which requires dedication, which requires a long time? And if you're can you change the way you fundamentally think? And maybe that's the reason why I chose to do a PhD.
I think Vivek's muted again.
Yeah.
Sorry. So let's move to Ullas. Ullas, if you can tell us your decision of why PhD, what was those key buzzwords and key things running in your brain when you decided you're going to do a PhD?
So, well, PhD is just about like your academic freedom what you get. So when I was working in industry, so as you all know, so industry works in a certain pattern, right? So you get a project in, so you have set of requirements to be satisfied for a customer, and you do it, and the next one kicks in, right? So that's how industry works. So whereas in academic, so it's mostly freedom of thinking. So what you get, so you get a research question, right? So based on that research question, there is many gaps which has been there, so you can focus on your gaps which you like to do. So that could be like, which could be of your importance, like if those skills or that gap would add something onto the CV, so that gives you something of freedom, so what you want to do. So there is no one who can dictate what you need to be doing for the rest of your 4 years. So that's one of the reason, the amount of freedom what you get in academia, for example, compared to industry. So that's the reason, that's the one key driving thing which made me to join PhD. So yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so
A different perspective there. Thank you for that. Shreyas now, he did talk about his journey, his academic journey. Shreyas, if you can tell us at what point you decided to do a PhD and why should somebody take up a PhD, that'd be quite useful.
Okay, so I think actually to just like this, Vadiraj actually said this the best, and it was like, it's he said it was a different decision for me, but it's kind of a different decision for everyone, right? And everyone has their own unique event that may happen when they where they decide they want to do a PhD. Uh, I I decided early on that I wanted to do research, and that's because I guess like just the the sheer satisfaction of solving a problem, or like I think a lot of us who've done research for a while, when you see when you do an experiment or you run a code and then you see the result, and like the result either is what you expected or it's something so unexpected that it just piques your curiosity. I think that's one of the most satisfying feelings you could ever have. And I really wanted to do research for my whole career, um, purely just based on how this made me feel. But like the thing that actually drove me to do the PhD was that in reality, doing a PhD, like to do research, the qualifications you need, sometimes a master's isn't enough. I mean, it's obviously very field dependent, but in a field like material science for me, where most of the work is very R&D and very research oriented, it just would give like having that PhD is just a way to it's a boost in qualifications, but it's also guaranteeing anyone who you approach that okay, this person, me in this case, knows how to perform research, can do research independently. The biggest thing about PhD is that it's an independent research study where, like, yes, you have inputs from the supervisor, you have collaborations and everything, but at the end of the day, it's yours. It's your own project that you've done for a long time. And the very fact that you're able to stick to one project for 3 years gives you that qualification. And in a field where research is really, really important, where R&D is the only part that innovation is sort of associated with, for me, the PhD is more of a necessary step rather than completely a choice. I mean, it's a choice that I wouldn't say unwillingly, but like it was a choice that I made when I chose to do research. But that's just my story, my field. And I'm sure it's for a lot of people, it is passion. For a lot of people, it is a lot of different things. But for me personally, I chose a PhD because it's a means to get me to the end that I want to go to for me, which is to be successful as a researcher, I need to have a PhD. And this is like, okay, this is a step for me that I need to take. It's for me, this is another degree just as much as an undergrad is for some people. So yeah, that's my motivation.
Excellent. A means to get to your goal. Very, very important keywords there. Interesting. All right, let's move on to Raj now. He will tell us his decision to do a PhD. As we saw through his introduction, he was in the tech sector, he's done a master's in the US, he's worked in India, and then a PhD. So he's quite global in terms of his education footprint and also has about 18 years of work experience. So we'll hear from him on what made him decide to do a PhD all of a sudden, or was it something that was in his plan all throughout? Raj, if you can tell us.
Vivek, I believe Raj has
I
dropped
think
out
he
of
wants to
call.
join back. Yeah, he just said he wants.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just. No, I don't see him as yet. So yeah, so I think let's move on. Probably we'll hear from him when he comes back. Okay, we'll move on to our next topic on eligibility for a PhD. So again, is PhD for everyone? You need to have a certain GPA or a certain percentage in your bachelor's degree? Should you have studied a certain degree? Should you have done your master's? I mean, I don't know. There's so many different questions running in my head. Let's hear from each one of them again. I think let's start with Shreyas this time. So, Shreyas, if you can tell us, what is the eligibility criteria for a PhD? In your case, you were purely academic. You didn't. So I think the answer is clear. You don't need work experience for a PhD.
Mhm.
One myth we have busted there. Is masters important for a PhD? Shreyas, what's your?
Um, so I think, my own personal experience, yes, the master's was beneficial. I would say the master's was really beneficial because Imperial as a university does come with its own set of standards, and I think being a graduate of that, I think instills some confidence in other in universities, in supervisors, thinking, okay, this person's graduated from here. They have it's. I don't like using this word, but the word is cloud. So yes, the masters definitely helped, but I think it's very important to actually see like every PhD program has different requirements, um, and and this is and every PhD has different requirements in different parts of the world as well. So in the States, a PhD is considered as a graduate program that you do right after your undergraduate. It's like an MSc plus PhD thing that if you don't do all 5 years, you can come out with an MSc sort of a thing, right? In the UK, you tend to apply for certain projects, and I think the whole eligibility wise, like I think having a master's is beneficial. It always gives you a little bit more, I would say, of it gives you a little bit more to your profile, obviously. But if you have enough research experience, none of that actually matters. Because in my own in my case, I had the offer for my PhD before I'd finished my master's at Imperial. So when I had applied, the only thing that was on my, say, CV and everything was I'm doing my master's at Imperial. There was no guarantee of what my grades were going to be. There was no guarantee of if my master's dissertation was going to be a valid research experience. So I was accepted into my program purely based on research experience that I had before joining the masters. So overall, the only thing that really matters is research experience, because a PhD is primarily a research degree. Um, but I think the doing having a master's just giving you additional facets to your profile, or giving you more opportunities to do research that will help strengthen your profile. So you don't necessarily have to have a PhD to um, uh, get. So you don't necessarily have to have a master's to get a PhD, but it certainly can help in giving you some more experience if you've not got that before. But again, like I said, most of the time, in order to actually, like, the biggest thing to actually getting the PhD is having the skill set that the particular project requires. And if you manage to get that skill set through work experience as opposed to like research, it's going to go a long way.
Interesting. Very nicely put there. We do have Raj back. Not sure he was trying to find an answer or running, chasing a dog or a bird. I don't know what happened, but we lost him for a bit. We do have him back on now. Raj, if you can tell us two things. So I think we missed you during the last query on why a PhD, and I think it's very interesting from your perspective because you've done a master's in the US, you've been working in the industry, and then you decided to do a PhD in business. So, completely different areas as well. So if you can tell us why a PhD from your perspective, and also if you can sell PhD to our audience, why doing a PhD will help people. And also what's the eligibility? As you said, you've done different things. So what was the eligibility for you to get into a business related PhD that you're currently doing? Over to you, Raj.
Sure, Vivek. So first of all, so the like why PhD? So I've been working for almost 18 years, and then I grew from being from being a engineer to a manager, and then I started looking at the career growth and everything, and then almost a mid career as a manager right now, right? So I was thinking like what's next and all that, and then career growth. When it comes to career growth, then it gets monotonous, as in you work for 3 or 4 years in a particular role, and then you get promoted, and then you work more, and then you get promoted, and so on. So it started looking like a bit linear growth to me, and I wanted opportunities and see what more can be done. So I'm ambitious with respect to career growth and everything. So I wanted to see what more can I do so that it can give me, it can open up more opportunities. And PhD was one of those which can open a lot of doors once it's complete. So I think we are going to talk about that as well, like what after PhD, right? So I think that's one of the things that I'm looking forward as a career growth, and what more can be done in the rest of my work life that's left, right? And secondly, my research interest, as in how to do research, was something that I wanted to learn always, and doing exactly gives me that, like how to learn to, how to as in how to collect data, how to analyze it, how to clean up your research question and come up with one, a good one first of all, and then how to write. These are certain things that we learn as part of doing PhD here, and I think that's just the beginning, like that's a beginning of research career. So I wanted to learn that, so that's the second big reason, is what I would say. And coming to eligibility now, I think my program is set up in a different way. It's 2+3 kind of a program, where the first 2 years is masters in research, which is not the same as the other masters, like masters in science or masters in computer science or whatever the other masters are, which are more applied. But this one is masters in research, is how to do good research. So that's what we would learn. So in the first 2 years, we have courseworks, as in we learn how to do quantitative methods, how to do quantitative analysis, qualitative analysis, and then cover some literature in our area of research. As in, I'm studying entrepreneurship, management, and strategy, and so on. So it's kind of an interdisciplinary research. So we cover some literature that's existing out there, as in do a lot of readings, understand what's been found or what's been researched so far, and then build on top of it, as in come up with research questions which no one has thought about yet, and then try to collect some data and analyze and do that research and publish, basically. So covering this literature and learning how to do good research is masters in research. And once I complete these first 2 years, I progress on into the next 3 years of PhD thesis work. So that's designed as 2+3. And I think this is very common in terms of management research. May not be so common in technology or engineering fields or even natural science. But I think with respect to management and business research, this is pretty common across the globe. We have the programs designed in 2+3 as a 5-year program or even 6 years in some cases. So that's about the MRes and PhD. About eligibility, so going by that, right? So since we are covering the ground up, as in doing coursework for masters in research, masters is not so much important. There are many people who straight away do their bachelors as in undergrads and then join this 2+3 program, um, to start learning how to do research, like earn masters research and then progress on to PhD. So but applying to these PhDs, there's a lot of competition, especially for top business schools, right? Having a master's helps because you would learn what's been researched so far in management, especially MBA or any type of management like masters of science in any type of management streams, right? That really helps to cover some ground, as in you would learn from all the researches that are existing so far. And then if you start doing PhD, it helps that way. Also in terms of applications, like if you have already studied at a grad level, then you've proven yourself like that you are academically strong, you are interested towards doing academic research and so on. So it helps in that way. Otherwise it's really not mandatory for like a master's is not mandatory to start doing PhD. So that's what I would say. More, I think I can talk about this more in later time. Yeah, Vivek, back to you.
Sure. I just have one. Yeah, no, I just have one follow-up question, Raj. I know you have 18 years of experience, and of course, you bring in a depth of knowledge of the industry. What is the benefit you have over somebody who just finishes engineering or finishes his bachelor's and then gets into this 2+3 PhD? So what is the difference? Of course, I mean, I think it's very clear that your experience helps you in structuring your research, structuring your thoughts, and you have those core benefits. But what is the difference between somebody just coming out of graduation to somebody having a depth of experience and then doing the PhD program? Can you just highlight this quickly?
Definitely, Vivek. So that's a great question. In fact, so a lot of people just start without work experience, and especially when it comes to management, like how do people behave? How do managers behave? How do companies behave? How do they strategize? And then how do people work in teams and collaborate, or how companies compete with each other? If as soon as they finish their studies, if they start doing PhD, I feel that they may not be able to relate so much in the field, like like what do companies do and why they do, and also like how are the team structures, how do they work with each other, how do individuals work with other individuals in these companies. So when it comes to management research or business research, it becomes important to connect and with the reality, right? Having work experience, at least some work experience, just to understand like how the companies are set up, right? Maybe ground up, when you join a company, like you are one of the at the lowest level in whatever role you are starting, right? And then like there are higher ups, there's a hierarchy, you have a manager. The manager sometimes controls a lot, trying to understand like why these things happen and how do these things work in the field. That's pretty important. The reason is when we start reading these research papers and everything, right? We connect with what's happening around us. And if you have work experience, consuming or understanding or digesting these kind of topics becomes really easier, as compared to not having this experience. So I think I would say that.
Great.
Vivek.
Yeah, no, very good perspective on both sides. All right, let's move to Ullas now. So Ullas, tell us, what's the eligibility for a PhD? We've understood masters is not important, but are there strong recommendation letters that's required, a certain grade in your engineering, or people who take up masters? What are some requirements from an educational perspective that are required for a PhD?
So whether it's in PhD or a professional experience or an industrial experience, let's say. So first thing always matters is the skills. So like every set of job or anything work, so always needs a skill. So the first thing for a research is like you should be knowing research methodology. So which could be, you can just read it as such, so wherever you get it on the internet. So in my master, so I had a separate module called research methodology, which is like, that's what helped me during my first years of my research, because it tells you what's the framework like for a scientific methodology. For example, say, let's say we form a research question, so then form a literature review, then get a gap like focus on what gap you'll be doing. So these are the research methodology steps which is really necessary, is what I feel. I always feel like masters is just like sometimes a continuation of your undergrad, so it doesn't actually add any importance actually onto your research experience, because research itself is something different. Research is mostly independent, so it doesn't, or like any coursework or anything can't dictate it. So most of our colleagues, for example in my lab, as like started directly the PhD at once like finishing their undergrad. So I think masters is not necessary. And of course, so you ask for like whether your industrial experience is required. Yes. So your industrial experience gives something like a primary soft skill factor, which is teamwork. So which is also necessary in research or in academia, because you need to be collaborating with various stakeholders. Let's say you'll be still working with government in my example, so I still work with EPSRC, which is my research council, which is Engineering and Physical Research Council, so or the UK Parliament. So there you have to still work as a team, because you need to get inputs from different sources and work the way they want. So it's like industrial experience also adds to it, so apart from the skills. And second thing, coming on to recommendation letters, yes, how your referrals give you a good recommendation letter also matters. Apart from that, so I would think that if you have a good number of research papers in your portfolio, that also adds on to your chances of getting into PhD. So most of the supervisors also see how much paper you have, because so the output of a research is always papers and patents. So as Vadhiraj said before, so obviously like they will be seeing whether you have that skill of writing a papers in a well qualified Scopus Index journals, for example. So yes, so I think masters is not necessary according to me, because there are many people who have joined without one. Yeah, so that's all.
Okay, no, interesting. Let's move to Dr. Vadhiraj now, who of course, has completed his PhD, maybe a few years since he has. So, Dr. Vadhiraj, when did you complete your PhD? If you could just tell our viewers, and
Uh,
if you can recall.
yeah, I finished my PhD about 7 months ago, so it's not even a year
Okay,
yet.
so, all right. So fairly fresh,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you can just recall your journey back to when you decided to do a PhD, what were the eligibility criterias? What was were you running around getting recommendation letters? Were you running around getting some key documentation that is required? If you can just go back memory lane and just tell us what is the eligibility for a PhD, and what would you recommend to new grads today who are looking for PhD in terms of getting 1, 2, 3 set, so that you are set on course to get get an admission in a top university.
Yeah. So my first PhD application was in 2014, and my first successful application was in 2017. But I joined my PhD in 2021. So first, when I started, I assumed, like a lot of people, that masters was necessary. So I started applying for these integrated courses where masters and PhDs are together. By 2015, when I got my first interview for PhD, then I was told in that interview that I don't really need a master. So if I really wanted to, I can do a PhD directly. But unfortunately, with the amount of experience I had, the funding was not enough, or the funding was only part funded, where I had to pay the remaining fees, which I did not want to do, and then I had to start finding something else. So when I knew that masters is not necessary, if you divide a PhD in about 3 years by half, the first 1.5 years is to decide what you are going to do, which involves a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, and the second bit is implementing what you have thought. So your master's is going to help a lot in the first 1.5 years. If you have a master's degree, you will spend less doing this first 1.5 year part of it. A lot of reading, you are already used to doing it, so it's a bit easier. But if you come from industry like I did, your second half is going to be easier because you're good at implementing things. So you spend a lot of time reading, but not a lot of time doing. So this is where I see the difference between having a master's degree or not. It's again a personal choice. Me personally, I don't believe it is required. If you have a industry experience, it's more than enough. Me as an example, I do not have a master's degree, so I finished my bachelor's, worked, and then I started my PhD. And that's my take on eligibility. Again, depending on the country you're applying, the eligibility changes. Most of Europe, you need to have a master's degree, so you don't have any choice. But in the UK, you have a choice if you don't want to do it.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's mandatory to have a master's before getting onto a PhD program in mainland Europe, France, Germany, etc.
Exactly.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. One quick advice to our audience. Again, we have a lot of students, we have a lot of people who've done their bachelor's and are working in the UK or other parts of the world. Let's focus on the UK for this question and this podcast as well. So what would be your recommendations for students who have just completed their master's and have PhD in their mind? Would you recommend they work a few years, or would you recommend they immediately apply for a PhD? And second is the people with work experience. Let's say they've done their bachelor's, they've worked for a few years, and they're looking for a PhD, something that's kind of got into their head. Would you recommend them doing a master's and then a PhD, or applying directly to a PhD? What's your quick take on that?
Depends on the area of their PhD. For example, if they are doing it in engineering like I did, then I would say work experience is important rather than master's degree. But if it is on material science like what Ullas is doing, probably doing a master's is better than working because you'll the need for theoretical knowledge is more than practical experience. So again, it goes back to which area you want to have your PhD in.
Okay, so the area is important. Yes, it's Shreyas who's doing his PhD in nanotechnology and material science. Interesting, very, very interesting take. All right. Does anybody among the speakers have anything further to add on eligibility for a PhD? Did we miss something? Yes, so Shreyas.
Yeah, sorry. So I don't. It's not. Well, not about missing anything, right? Like, even though a lot of us do say that a master's isn't necessary, and in my case, even though I have one, I actually got the PhD before I finished my master's. I think
Okay.
there are definitely benefits to doing the master's, and I think the biggest one to that comes in again back to that what Ullas was saying about the like your recommendations, right? It's just I think I had applied for PhDs before I joined my master's, and I got rejected from every single one of them, and the only difference, the only difference there was between my profile when I applied before doing my master's and during my master's was that the person giving me my recommendation, my letter of recommendation, was from Imperial as well, and a much more known professor. So in terms of is the master's necessary? No, you don't need to. In terms of the skills but I think if you are changing fields, then I think the master's could help because I did my undergrad in mechanical, but my master's was in material science. But at the same time, I think this is also kind of the same track that even Raj was saying, where it's important to actually build the connections as well, right? And having more professors that who are like even researchers that who will vouch for your research skills will always help. So if I even though I might not have needed my master's to get my PhD program, I certainly believe that getting a recommendation letter from one of the professors at Imperial was a lot more, I guess, like in my favor than getting a recommendation letter from someone who is in a different field of like mechanical engineering, who might not actually be well known in, say, like in material science research. So I think um, it's not like, it from a qualification perspective, it might not be necessary to have a master's, but any opportunity you can get to actually be to sort of make connections with people in the field, I think will always help, regardless of whether the master you actually learn something in the masters, or like whether you actually get a research paper or something out of it. Just having some more professors who will back you up in terms of your recommend in vouching you for your research skills is one of the, I think, the strongest things that you can get from a master's degree for your profile towards a PhD.
Okay. So we've established
Yeah.
the recommendation letters are a very important aspect during your admission process.
Yeah.
So somebody who has studied overseas, let's say, for example,
Mhm.
and looking for a PhD in the UK, how do they fill the gap? Is it masters? Is it work experience in that country? What's your take on that?
For me personally, I think my professor back in Imperial was well known within the UK, and he's headed up a few conferences as well. So I think that played a big role. And he had also connected me with potential PhD projects that were in Europe as well, because a good researcher has a better research network. And I think uh, the it wasn't I think you don't have to have the know a professor in the country you want to do a PhD in, but
Okay.
you need to know a professor who might know people who is known in the field of what you want to do. So I think the field doesn't depend on the borders between countries. If
Correct.
someone doing material science in the States will know someone doing material science in Europe, or um, in the UK, if the quality of research is good. I think you don't have to go out of your way to apply for a master's in the country you want to do a PhD in, but you could actively try to network with people who sort of are in are doing who work in a country that you want to work in. So
Okay.
if especially when you go for things like invited lectures, get like there's a lot of events that happen in the university where external speakers are invited, and there's sometimes, or like you're just going for conferences, volunteering at conferences to make connections with the professors. um it's just that it's easier to do all of this during your masters, because as a student your access to this is also like you always have people coming into your university to give speeches, to give talks, to give like maybe just to visit. But like if you are not really like if you're um just focusing, I mean, I guess if you're not doing the masters but you're also not actively building your own network of researchers, then it makes it really hard, even if you've got the masters with you or something. It's all about knowing people in industry who can back, or like in the field who can back you up.
Okay, okay, it's interesting. All right, so we have established that a master's degree is not mandatory. It is useful, of course, it comes with its benefits, as our speakers have spoken. Uh, it's a source for you to get your reference letters, it's a source for you to kind of prove your worth in the field that you're applying for a PhD. But nevertheless, as many of the speakers said, you can apply for a PhD directly after completing your bachelor's. That route is also open. It has certain pros and cons, which we heard, and of course, we can hear more about that as well as we go forward. But another key thing that we did establish was having strong recommendation letters are vital. So I think if you're looking at a PhD as a career move, make sure you work on them from the very start. Of course, reach out to any of our speakers here on how they went about getting their recommendation letters. Should you get one in the university you're applying, somebody renowned in the industry, in the country, somewhere outside the country? As Shreyas said, it's not necessary that the person giving you the recommendation should be in the country you're applying for a PhD. But again, a lot of questions that may arise, and something our panelists can help you with in the future. So great. So I think we answered a lot of very fundamental questions on what is the eligibility for a PhD. So let's move on to our next topic, which is a direct PhD or an integrated program, MPhil, M Research, plus PhD. So what are the various streams? So I'll pass this on to Ullas or Raj, who want to explain, what is the difference between the different types of PhD. Who's going to take that? Ullas or Raj?
Yeah, so going on, so what is direct PhD is like, so that's what we said, right? So before you do your undergrad and directly jump onto your PhD, and whereas integrated masters is like you have a master's plus a PhD which is being tied together. So which one is better? So as it stands, so it depends on like how much you are equipped with, so with your skills. So if you really need a master's, for example, you can go for an integrated program. So whereas in an integrated program, so with your name, so once you graduate from your PhD, for example, so your name would be like BE, for example, or BTech, followed by MPhil, than PhD, or like any fellowship you have on your name. But if you go for a direct PhD, it's going to be direct. So it depends on, like as I said, so you need to weigh your skills low. So if you need more skills, so and if you think if you integrated masters would benefit you more, so then I would suggest like you go for an integrated one. So or else if you feel that you're confident enough to, for example, to take a direct PhD, for example, you can just jump into direct PhD. And which one is better? Obviously, so every university or a professor has a set of requirements, or a project also has some requirements for it to join. So it will also sometimes dictate. So whether, in my case, it was a direct PhD, so I didn't do any, because I already had a master's prior to joining a PhD. So I just directly went into PhD. So that's my stand for this.
All right. Thanks, Ullas.
So I can speak a
Yeah,
little bit about
go on, Raj.
integrated program.
Yes,
Sorry,
go on, Raj.
there is a bit of bad connection on my side. Sorry, I think I ended up talking when Ullas was talking.
No, it's fine. I think we can hear you. There's a dog behind, but that's fine.
There's a dog barking. They're playing out there.
you can speak. You can speak.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, I thought Ullas completed. I'm sorry about that to interrupt. About eligibility and all that, and then whether direct PhD is better or not. So in my case, I can share my experience. A direct PhD would have been difficult for me. I mean, if it was not for MRes plus PhD designed that way, it would have been really difficult, because I'm a master's in computer science, not in management. I don't have an MBA degree or something, even though I have 18 years of work experience, both as engineer as well as a manager. They're mostly into applied field, as in I worked as a manager, but when it comes to academic research, it's very different. The terms or concepts are different. The methodologies that have been used are different, and so on. So I see some of my other peers who have started with PhD directly without starting with a master's as an integrated program. uh, I've seen them struggle, as in how to even come up with a good research question, how to clean it up, how to narrowly focus on a specific research question rather than a very broad and an open-ended question, right? And then how to collect data and how to analyze it. There are multiple methodologies like quantitative analysis, like there are multiple quant methods that we can use. We study all of them as part of our integrated coursework in the first 2 years of this program, and that really helps. In the first 2 years we would study all of that, as in how to do good research, how to clean up your research question, how to come up with a research question, and so on, and then cover some literature, right? And then from by the end of second year, we are almost trying to see clean up our research areas. This is what I want to focus on, and this could be my research question for my PhD, right? These are a set of this is a research stream that I can look at for my PhD, and that's when the PhD would start. So uh, especially in my case, this integrated program has helped. Otherwise, there are direct programs who for people who already have research experience. I think we discussed about it in the last screen. I think last question about is masters even necessary, right? So I think we touched upon this topic. Like if people have research experience, if they know these research methodologies already by some other means, maybe as part of their other masters or any other masters program they did, or they just know based on their work experience, if they have worked in a university as a research assistant, for example, or a company which does a lot of research like statistical institutes and so on, right? If they do have research experience, then it may be easier for them. But in my case, going through this integrated program helps. And same I can see with my classmates as well, right? They are also doing this integrated program. They have done masters, but they're from different fields like economics or something else as an undergrad. So yeah, so that would be my take. Thank you.
All right, thank you, thank you. So yeah, different perspectives and different ways we can approach a PhD. So our speakers are trying to give you as much they can, but if you have further questions, make sure you reach out to them and they'll be happy to answer your questions. Okay, so we will move next to how to find a PhD. Should I apply in England? Should I apply in Scotland? Should I just do it in India? Should I do it in the US? Should I go to China? Should I do it in Australia? I mean, there's so many different places that you can look to do a PhD. Of course, top rated universities is going to be something you are going to be looking for. Professors who are well renowned, that's also something that's going to play a key part in your decision. So let's hear from I don't know if Dr. Vadhiraj, if he's still there. I don't know if he's left. He's left. Okay. All right. So Ulas, maybe Ulas Raj, if you can just explain, what is the different steps to finding a PhD. So in our audience, again, we have a lot of audience from Karnataka who speak Kannada as well. So we'll just try and make this a little in Kannada, a mix of Kannada and English, of course, as possible. Ulas, if you can just explain steps, PhD ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕಂಡಿಡಿಯೋದು, ಯಾವ ಕಂಟ್ರಿ, ಯಾವ ದೇಶ, ಯಾವ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್, ಏನ್ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು ನಾವು ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ.
ಸೊ PhD ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗ ನಾವೇನ್ ನೋಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು US ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, UK ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ಜರ್ಮನಿ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಇಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದ ಮೇನ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಯುರೋಪ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಗೆಟಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲರೈಸ್ ನಾವು, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಫ್ರೀ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಇದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಯಾವಾಗ UK ಮತ್ತೆ US ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ದ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೀವಲ್ವಾ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಫೀಸ್ ಕೂಡ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ UK ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಫೀಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಸೊ ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ನಾವು ಮೇನ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಯುರೋಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಇರಲ್ಲ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಟೈಮ್. ಸೊ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆತರ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ಲೈಕ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಹೆಂಗಿದೆ, ಸೊ ಯಾವ ತರ ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಇವಾಗ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಥಿಂಗ್. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರಿ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಸೊ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅದ್ರ ಪ್ರಕಾರ, so most of the process will actually so they will dictate most of it. So when you're choosing your professor, ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದಾಗ, ಸೊ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ನೀವು PhD ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀರಾ. ಸೊ ಹೇಗೆ ಅವ್ರು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಹೇಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ, ಸೊ ಈಗ ನನ್ನ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ತಗೊಂಡಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಲಿಂಕ್ಡ್ಇನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರೇ ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಈ ತರ ನಂದೊಂದು PhD ಇದೆ, ಸೊ ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ವೆಲ್ ಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಇದೆ, ಸೊ ಈ ತರ ಒಂದು ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಇದೆ, ಸೊ ಈ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸೊ ನಿನ್ ಏರಿಯಾ ಅಥವಾ ನಿನ್ನ ಲಿಂಕ್ಡ್ಇನ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೈಲ್ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಆ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೂಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಸೊ ನೀನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಯು ಬಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿ ಟು ವರ್ಕ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಸೊ ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಆಯ್ತು ಅದೇ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬಾಷಲ್ಲೂ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಸೊ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಬಂತು, ಸೊ ಬಂದೆ. ಸೊ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಡೋದು ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್, ಆದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಯುವರ್ PhD ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಇಸ್, ಆರ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ದಮ್ ಆಸ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಟರ್. ಇವಾಗ ಅದು ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿಕ್ ಟರ್ಮ್. ಅದು ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಟರ್ಸ್ ಎಷ್ಟು ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಪೋರ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಅವಾಗ PI ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು PhD ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. ಅಂಡ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ನ ಸೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವರು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ವೈವಾ ಕಂಡಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಇವೆಲ್ಲಾನು ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸು ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್ ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಡಿಕ್ಟೇಟ್. ಸೊ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಕೆಲವೊಂದ್ಸತಿ ನಾನ್ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅಸಿಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್, ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ನಿಮ್ ಜೊತೆ ಬೆಳೆಯಕ್ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಬಟ್ ಸಮ್ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ಆಗಿರೋರು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ ಕೆಲವೊಂದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ನೋಡಿರೋ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ವೆರಿ ಕೀ ಡ್ರೈವಿಂಗ್ ಫೋರ್ಸ್. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ, ಸೊ ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ರ್ಯಾಂಕಿಂಗ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಯಾವ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಗ್ರಾಜುಯೇಟ್ ಆಗ್ತೀರಾ ಅದ್ರ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ PhD ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಏರಿಯಾ ಎಷ್ಟು ನಾವೆಲ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ PhD ಇಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ನಾವೆಲ್ಟಿ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದೊಂದು ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದನ್ನ ನೀವು ಎಷ್ಟು ಆಡ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಅಥವಾ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಕಾಂಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಟು ದ ನಾಲೆಜ್ ಬೇಸ್, ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇನ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್ಸ್. ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಎಸ್ ಸಮ್ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್ಸ್. ಕೆಲವೊಂದು PhD ಡಿಗ್ರೀಸ್ಗೆ ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ STEM ಇಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ವೈಡ್, ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಡಸಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎನಿ ಬಾರ್ಡರ್ಸ್. ಲೈಕ್ ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ಇಂಗ್ಲೆಂಡಿಗೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಸೊ ಲಿಟ್ರೇಚರ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಡಿಕ್ಟೇಟೆಡ್. ಸೊ ಅವಾಗ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ರ್ಯಾಂಕಿಂಗ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ನಾವು ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ನೋಡೋ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ರ್ಯಾಂಕಿಂಗ್ ಓದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಟ್ ಡಸಂಟ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ಸ್, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಥ್ರೋಪುಟ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಥವಾ ಎಷ್ಟು ನೋವೆಲ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಏರಿಯಾ, ಅದ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹೌ ಟು ಫೈಂಡ್ ಅ PhD. ಸೊ ನನ್ನ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಪ್ರಪೋಸಲ್ ಬರ್ದಿಲ್ಲ, ಟು ಬಿ ಹಾನೆಸ್ಟ್. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ನಾನು ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಯ್ತು, ಅದಾಗ್ತಿದಂಗೆ ನಂಗೆ ಆಟಾಸ್ ಬಂತು, ಕ್ಯಾಸ್ ಬಂತು, ನಾನು ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆದೆ. ಸೊ ನಾನ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಪ್ರಪೋಸಲ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಬರ್ದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಥವಾ ನಾನು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಏರಿಯಾನ ಹುಡುಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ನನ್ನ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಅವರೇ ನೋಡಿದ್ರು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅನಿಸ್ತು ನಾನು ಮ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ನನಗೂ ಆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಫಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಟ್ರು. ಸೊ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಡ್ ಔಟ್ ವೆಲ್. ಸೊ ಅಟ್ ದ ಎಂಡ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿ. ಸೊ ಇಷ್ಟೇ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಹೌ
Bambat, as they say in Kannada. ತುಂಬಾ ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನೀವು you found the right, or they found you rather, and it's all worked out in your favor.
Yes.
ರಾಜ್ ಅವರೇ, ಯಾರ್ಕ್ಷೈರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಐಮ್ ಶ್ಯೂರ್ ನೀವು ಪಾರ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ಇವಾಗ ಜೋರಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಒಂದ್ 2-3 ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಬಂದು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಮಾತಾಡಿಸ್ಬೋದು, ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ನಿಮ್ ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್ ಏನು? PhD, how do you find a PhD? What's the criteria? You can ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಕನ್ನಡ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಈ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂತ.
ಶೋರ್. ನನ್ನ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ನನ್ನ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಏರಿಯಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಬಂದು ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗು, ಮತ್ತೆ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಂಪನಿ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಟಜಿ, ಈ ತರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ ನಾನು. ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ನನ್ನ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಥಾಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಇಂದ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಬೇಸಿಕಲಿ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಯಾವ ತರ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಈ ತರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಸೊ ಅದ್ರ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ನಾನು ಸರ್ಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಲೈಕ್ ಇವಾಗ ಯಾವ ತರ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ತರ ಸ್ಟಡೀಸ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ, ಯಾವ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಈ ತರ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಆ ತರ ಎಲ್ಲ ನೋಡೆ. ಲೈಕ್ ಇವಾಗ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸಾಸ್ ಡೆಲಾಸ್ ದವ್ರದ್ದು ಒಂದ್ ವೆಬ್ಸೈಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ಚ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಇಟ್ ಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಔಟ್, ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ದು ಟಾಪ್ ಜರ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಯಾವ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಈ ತರ ಅವ್ರದ್ದೊಂದು ಡೇಟಾ ಬೇಸ್ ಮೇಂಟೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ, ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ನನಗೆ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಲೈಕ್ ಐ ಸಾ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಲಂಡನ್ ಅಂತ ಬಂತು, ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಇಂಪೀರಿಯಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಕೂಡ ಇತ್ತು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ತುಂಬಾ US ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟೀಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ದೆನ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಮೈ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್. ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ದೆನ್ ಐ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಲುಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಟ್ ವಿಚ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್, ಯಾವ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರು ಯಾವ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ತರ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಪೇಪರ್ಸ್ ಪಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದಾರೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ನನ್ನ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಜೊತೆ ಮ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗತ್ತೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ. ಇವಾಗ ನನ್ನ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ಆಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿನರ್ಶಿಪ್, ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಟಜಿ ಆ ತರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು. ಹೋದೆ, ಅವಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಇಂಪೀರಿಯಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದು. ಇಂಪೀರಿಯಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಲಂಡನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಗಳು ನನ್ನ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಏರಿಯಾಗೆ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇರೋರೆಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಂದ್ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ 4-5 ಜನ ಸಿಕ್ರು ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಅ ಗುಡ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್. ಓಕೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ಸ್ ಹೂ ಕುಡ್ ಗೈಡ್ ಮೀ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಿ ದೆನ್ ಐ ಗಾಟ್ ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ದೇರ್. ಸೊ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು. ಮೇಬಿ ದಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಮೇಬಿ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್. ಬಟ್ ಯಾ, ಸೊ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಆಗಿ ದೆನ್ ಫೈನಲಿ ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇಂಪೀರಿಯಲ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಐ ಜಾಯಿಂಡ್ ಹಿಯರ್. ಸೊ that is a background, Vivek.
All right, no, excellent, excellent. Right choice. Imperial is highly rated, and yeah, and a fairly different lifestyle as well, being in London. Shreyas, who's not in London, he's in a little more serene Scotland, a lot more fresh air, a lot more beautiful. What made you decide on University of Edinburgh, and why not something in London? Why not something in Europe? Why not something in the US? What was your driving force on finding the right PhD university for you?
There's a long answer and then there's a short answer, right? The short answer is funding, right? This is the only position that I was eligible for funding, because it's very difficult to actually, the UK's funding policies are very weird, and it's its own nasty web of things that you need to go through to whether how much funding is actually open for international students. But if we want to take the long answer of how I actually identify professors and everything, it goes back a long time to my undergrad days, where I wanted to find myself a research internship to when I was trying to start off building my profile. And so this I had a very there was this advice that I got from some of my seniors at that time, which I think still holds good to this day, and that is make a spreadsheet of professors you'd like to work with, right? And it might seem very straightforward, like, yeah, sure, anyone who organizes themselves are going to have this. But it's actually very difficult to, um, the whole process of identifying and finding professors takes up a lot more time than you actually think. And in fact, sometimes it's harder to find the professor that you're doing the PhD with than actually getting the PhD after you find him or her. So in my case, um, uh, and different field, and this is also a very field dependent thing, right? So as soon as I identified my research interest, which was a material science and energy storage, um, the ease, like there are one way to go about it is to look at papers that you yourself find interesting, that I found interesting. I found a lot of interesting papers on batteries and solar energy, and through that, there were certain names that were recurring, and that's when I was like, okay, this professor is working, or this researcher is working in a lot of things that I want to find, and that's how I would add this person to the list. And so I build up lists by, like, just when I'm reading papers and like, okay, this person knows what's going on. This person is doing something I want to work. Another thing I did was I actually went through universities that were highly ranked and like, okay, like, started identifying professors in my field from there. But then once you get like a very small group of professors that you have, it's actually easy to expand the list, because all you need to do is look at the professors and the people that they are working with, right? And then you actually uncover that there's this huge collaborative network, and you can, sneak in kind of through different ways. So it really helps to have like your list of professors, something that or a list of people you would like to work with. And, you know, it's always great to keep updating that list. And as your interests change over time, so will all the names of the professors in the list. And you can actually see that as well. You can see, I used to be interested in this, I used to be interested in something else. So that was actually how I started off, right? And actually I emailed a lot of those professors I'd made from a list almost 3 years ago about for my PhD program. But I was unfortunate that even though many of them, like, okay, I say many, but like it was like five of them, wanted to work with me. They didn't have funding for international students. And so I had to sort of just take it and move on. Like there was like, it was good because I'm like, okay, I'm qualified enough to work with them. And that may give me some confidence in myself and in my profile. But it was bad luck. Another really important resource that I think a lot of people should try to look for. There are always organizations and forums online for researchers to advertise for their field, right? An example would be there's a thing called Psyche, PSI, like the Greek letter hyphen K, which is a community for a lot of people doing computational physics and computational chemistry and computational material science. And people would post advertisements for their PhDs. You know, if some professor got funding and he was looking to fill up a PhD position, there'd be a lot of adverts. Another thing that I know is something known as Inspire, which is for theoretical physics, right? And this is something a friend of mine has used. And there are, I think there's something for math as well. I'm not sure, but every field has some sort of a community, an online forum where people actively advertise themselves, right? LinkedIn is obviously one of them, but that's from a very work and professional type thing. So usually researchers are kind of like they just want to they want it within their own community, not like but they don't necessarily always want to broadcast to the whole world. They want to keep it within the community because they're just looking for a certain type of profile. And I think if you can identify or find some of these research forums, I think they will help a lot because my PhD, I got it through something that I saw in the that it's a Psyche. There was a job advert for a PhD position, and my first response was I responded to the owner of the advert. I emailed the professor and I said, "Hey, is this open to international students?" And he said yes. As soon as I said that it was open to international students, I took it. So you can identify things like there are a lot of resources like this, which I feel make it a lot more easier. So even like a website like findaphd.com, they're very clear with some like advertising PhDs and and then obviously the best and most I think the highest success rate of finding a PhD is when you have a good connection with your own professor or people or people in the research community, because this might be a little bit of like insider information or whatever, but whenever a professor actually has funding for a PhD, his or her first thought process or the first, like who do I want for my PhD would be within their own collaborative networks, right? Because if my professor works in magnetism in 2 dimensions and he's looking for a student, his collaborators are the first person he would ask saying, do you have any eligible students who would want to work in magnetism in 2 dimensions? Because he knows that the people who he's working with also work with magnetism in 2 dimensions. So in terms of like the sometimes the most straightforward way is to ask your own supervisor or like someone who you consider your mentor, like are people in his network or her network looking for students. And when you come as a recommendation from someone who has collaborated with you or with the professor, you're very high up on the list of getting into their program. So yes, I think identifying in it like my three big sort of contribution, I would say like things about finding a PhD is you either like one forums where research forums where a lot of uh, researchers, professors, and students get to see job advertisements. Making your own list of professors by going through university pages and research papers where you identify people in your own field and then you look at who they collaborate with and you make that into your own spreadsheet. And the last one would be actually like trying to network through your own mentor and your own supervisor. I think those are my three almost like the most likely chances of finding a PhD that would suit you, right? But yeah, I think there are other ways people you can get lucky as well. But yeah, these are three things that I did actively, and it helped me increase chances. I only ended up getting one offer because there was only one uh, PhD position where it was open to international students. But I knew that there were several professors who were willing to take me on without funding. So, that's another thing that we will talk about probably later on. But that's my story from that.
No,
So
you
coming
pretty
on,
much laid out the handbook of what you need to do in terms of getting into a PhD. I come to you, Ulas, just 1 second. I think Shalini is asking us to share links of these various program
okay.
forums. There's something we can provide on the comment section at a later point. Shreyas.
I can repeat it for her
Yeah,
as well.
so I think
Repeat
I
it
think
for her.
both of
So
your streams, if you can just tell what are those key forums, that'll be helpful. So
Uh,
Shreyas, if you can type, and Ullas will now
can
speak
I?
about his experience.
Oh, sorry. Just where do I type it though? In like
You
in
can just type in the comment section, and it goes on to YouTube and various streams. Or we
in the
can do it at a
okay.
later point if yeah. So
Yeah, I actually
this is
could
the
not
one.
figure out where the
Yeah,
comment section is.
it's right
Because I
next
think
to the speaker, right next to the users. If
but
it's
like
available, fine. You're not able to
I'm
see.
not able
Okay,
to
fine.
actually send it.
Okay, fine. We'll do that at a later point. Yeah. Ulas, if you can share your thoughts on this.
So the first thing is like it's called findaphd.co.uk. So that's the first link. I repeat, it's findaphd.co.uk. So that's the first thing. And second thing would be Research Council. So Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, which is called EPSRC. So where you get to see your engineering and physical sciences research projects, where you can see what's the funding and who is the supervisor or a professor for it. And second thing would be like for medical, it is MRC, which is Medical Research Council. I think every school and every college has their own research council basically. So that's the first thing. And second thing is like you can sometimes approach the supervisors or the professors for directly by email. So you can just lay down a mail, a blank email, asking them for a PhD funding. Sometimes you can directly just apply for PhD application in the like any universities, and professors will look onto it and come back to you. And the last would be LinkedIn. Um, so these are the networks where you can find some of the research projects. And find a PhD is the most useful one because they will say what the kind of funding is. It would be like UK funded, UK students only, or international students, or sometimes it's called worldwide students. And they will mention the cost of like they will be covering for how many years. So find a PhD is more a niche thing. So findaphd.co.uk.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
that's a website,
Okay,
findaphd.co.uk.
it's co.uk, right?
.co.uk, yeah. So that's a very good website where you can find all the streams irrespective of any research council. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's where you need to look. But of course, there are various other sources as well. But this could be your first point that you go and do your research. But if you're looking for more specific groups, again, reach out to Lars, reach out to Shreyas, and they should be happy to share these groups with you.
Actually, I think the .co.uk has become the .com. Yeah, they moved to a more
Mhm.
I just realized the findaphd.co.uk moved to a .com. I think they became a little bit more I don't know. It's a domain thing.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
yeah,
But
just
yeah,
clarifying because
yeah, I think at the end of it, we'll just give you a list of active forums so that you know where to look. But again, you
yeah.
can reach out to the speakers to get further. All right, so we've already run 90 minutes. We still have a lot to do. I think we'll take one more key question before we kind of, what next, and funding is something we have to discuss. But maybe we can combine these two in terms of, you've decided which university you want to go, how you're going to apply, which professor you're targeting, etc. Quickly, if we can run through the last first, if you can tell us, what next, and also what is the whole process of funding. So what next in funding, if you can kind of club them and share your views. Last first.
So once you find your supervisor, so first I would say, like, what are your key research skills, or like which you could be like using in your research. So write down all of it, and what is the strongest area of research which you have. So then find your supervisors, right? So that comes like that. That's gonna be the first thing. So it's like you'll be writing a mail. So then, what is your academic background and what's the motivation for your PhD? You write a mail to the supervisors, and you obviously need a funding. So why I always suggest, like, you need to take a funding. The first thing is, like, all the PhD projects, what you do and what's the output, what you get from us is always been sold sometime. So, or else it will be patented. Obviously it has something monetary thing which has been linked to it. So that's the first thing. So that's why I always recommend people to, because PhD is more than a degree, it's like a work. So you'll be working for someone to deliver an output. So obviously if you're doing a work, so they should be obligated to pay you. So which is obviously, so PhD shouldn't be self-funded, because obviously in UK, so if you see for a 4 years of a PhD for a course, it's gonna be like every year it costs you 50,000 pounds, which is like almost 50 lakhs in Indian rupees, for example, with a conversion rate what we have, or more than that, because it anyways fluctuates. So if you compare it for a 4 years, obviously it comes around 200,000 pounds, or equal to equivalent to 2 crores in India. So obviously you can't afford. It's not like if you can afford also, it's not ethically for the supervisor to ask you to fund for a PhD, because it's a work, and your work will be sold to someone in near future. So obviously they have to fund for your PhD. So obviously I would always recommend any student is like, until and unless you get a funding, never start a PhD. Although it's like you have a money, you can afford it, but I still recommend not to do it. So the first reason for it is, like, I have heard that in most of the universities. So this is what, because we work with a cohort of PhD students, right? So we get sometimes feedback that if they're self-funded, the supervisors doesn't care much rather than a funded student, like funded PhD students, because they think it's their obligation to make them pass, or else that money will be put just into the water, right? So obviously, like, if it's your money, obviously it's your project. So this is a understanding what I have got from the other PhD students. So if you are being funded by yourself, they say it's your project. While if they are funding your project, so they'll be like, it's our project, so we'll drive it together so that you'll pass. So that's attitude. That's what I have heard from others, although I have not experienced personally. So this has been heard by different PhD students from my cohort. So that's one of the thing why I would recommend is, like, so 2 crores is a very good amount of money. If you are in Bangalore, obviously you can buy 2 apartments, right, with that money. So obviously you shouldn't be investing something for free. That's the first thing. So second thing is, like, funding is very much necessary, because the cost of living is always very much high in UK. Obviously you can't afford, and it always fluctuates, because the cost of living always rises in UK. So obviously I would recommend that you take funding from the research council or from your supervisors. It's going to be a win-win situation, because your work is obviously being sold to someone in future, because when you're passing your thesis, so obviously you'll write a agreement saying that you don't have any like, you give a rights to them to sell it to someone. So obviously they make money out of it with your work. So obviously then you have every right to ask a money from them, right? So that's what I would say. So you need to have a funding. So obviously don't fund yourself. Self-funded is always like, is going to be a hole in your pocket. Never do that. So other thing is, like, so uh, in while you are doing your PhDs, there are money. There are many ways to get your money. Like, so other than what's the funding is being given, is gonna be, it's called TAs, where you're gonna go teach on behalf of your supervisor in different modules, or help in labs. So where it will give you extra money for your, like, it's gonna be extra money for your research as well. So but I would strongly recommend, like, you need to take a funding for both tuition, stipend, and any conferences that you go in future. For all the travel expenses, you get it covered with your stipend for at least for 4 years, for the entire course of your PhD. So that's what I would recommend. And how to apply for PhD is, like, as I said, the question goes back to the previous one. So in findaphd.com, what you can see, so there will be a tagline saying, like, this is funded for worldwide students, not just for, so if it's UK students, never apply for it, because they just cover tuition fees rather than stipends. So I would rather apply for international student, which has been given on the findaphd.co.uk. So where you need to get your funding for 4 years, because obviously your work will be sold. So that's the logic, right? So if your work is being sold, you have to get paid. So never always try to fund yourself, because there is always an obligation issues from your supervisors. That's what I have heard, although I have never experienced, because I was funded anyways. So that's my takeaway, like in terms of funding. Just take a funding from your supervisor or from the research council.
Yeah, very, very important. Funding is very important. I mean, you may have a lot of money, but again, as Ullas said, you are doing work, so you've got to be paid for that eventually. And for a lot of people, getting paid is important for you to sustain, pay your fees, pay your living cost, etc., etc. We move to Shreyas, back to Shreyas. He explained what needs to be done choosing the right university. Once you have done that, how do you go about Shreyas? I mean, is it a lot of cold emailing professors? Are you
Ah,
selling something? What's the next step once you've decided which university, which course, which professor to target? What's your advice, and how do you go about this?
so yeah, as soon as you said cold emailing, it just took me back to like a few years ago. And like, it is a very scary process to cold email. I have done
Mhm.
my fair share of it over multiple years. And I'm like, for me, my success rate hasn't been very high. Let's just put it that way. Uh, but generally, I think the first step and the most important step is once is finding your supervisors, right? And like, you've done that. Like we've discussed that before. So the next thing is to find out more about is to actually just find out if there is a possibility of doing a PhD with them, right? A lot of times I there are a lot of professors on multiple lists of mine who I would love to work with, but if they don't want to take any students, it's pointless for me to try and apply, right? So especially with the UK and even with Europe, where the supervisor actually gets the final say in almost all of this. Uh, and this is something very different from the States, because in the States you're applying for the program, and it's only and like the way it happens is you apply for the program, and after you get the program and you join is when you actually you have the option to choose a different professor than who you had in mind when you started the program with and all of that. So like you get to actually just choose after you join the program. But like getting into the program is not like is also a completely different process in the States. So I'm going to focus on what I would the experience that I've had, which is the UK, and it can loosely translate to Europe as well. So the first thing I did as soon as I've identified a professor is write an email to them. And the like yes, we know the slides showed something a concise yet compelling email, right? And you can see that there's a bunch of structure and everything that we have, right? And like this is we don't need to go too much into the details of all of this, but like essentially what you're doing is you're trying to reach out to the professor, and you're reaching out to the professor with one sort of a goal, right? It's one, to introduce yourself, to say, I'm I'm so and so person with so and so qualifications and research experience or whatever. I'm interested in your work, and I want to work with you, right? You're not reaching out to them to get the PhD immediately. You're reaching out to them to find the possibility of like do they have funding? Do they even want to take PhD students? Because sometimes. It's like there are limits that professors themselves have and how many students they can take. The university puts constraints. You can only have one student per year, one new student per year, or like you can only have two students per year. And so you need to reach out to them to find out actually what their scenario is. Right? Not every professor wants a student, right? Even if you want to do the PhD with them. So it's really important to email. And the first thing, your email does not have to be selling yourself. Right? You don't have to. It doesn't necessarily need to be the one like that. Email has to have. Don't put as much. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to write a perfect email. What you want to write is a concise and short email, because one of the most misunderstood, like things, I would say like the most common mistakes, and this applies to myself as well. I've made this a lot before I learned this the very hard way. Um, when it comes to writing an email, keeping it short and concise is more important than than actually giving information, because most professors are busy. It's a very busy thing. They've got classes to teach, they've got courses to manage, and mark students or whatever. They've got to interact, like they've got to supervise their PhD students, they've got to supervise their postdocs, and they have administrative duties. It's a lot. They barely get so and then that's why also sometimes you will notice that even if you send a very long email, the response is usually like 2 lines, because they don't have the time. So if you think about it that way, what you want to do is reach out to them and be as direct as possible. I'm so and so. I'm This is my research experience. I like your work. I want to work with you. Link to your CV and everything else, because the CV is what you don't need to explain your CV in your email, because then what's the point of linking the CV? You have to express your interest, and you have to, and most importantly, you need to ask them if they have positions open. If they don't have positions open, it doesn't matter whether you have the best CV in the world, or like you're the most qualified person. If they don't have a position open, you can't apply for something that isn't there. So I think once you've identified professors, it's essential to reach out to them as soon as you can, and don't put way too much pressure on writing the perfect email. Write an email which is short enough that it just says, explicitly expresses your interest, and links to your CV, right? And if they respond favorably, then you say you want to have a meeting, you want to discuss, you want to talk to him about his work. That happens after, but the first thing you do is you try to, and then if you get to meet the professor, you get to actually interact with them. They say they're looking for a student, then you're great. You could say, hey, this is my research experience. I know what you work on, and I'd like to build a project with you. Like, I want to build a research question. And you have an interaction with them, and so then you ask them, do they have funding? Do they, and once and this is, I think, something that I would have loved to hear when I was getting started on this journey as well, which is, if the professor is genuine, professors need PhD students as much as you need them. Okay. And I think it's a very important thing that is very easy for us to misunderstand. We always put them on a pedestal. We think of them as this big authority figure that, oh my God, they're giving us the opportunity to do a PhD. Yeah, that's true. But also, if you don't do it, someone has to do their work. They don't, like, they're too busy. You're helping them just as much as they're helping you. And I think and that's really important, because when they and you and them are working together, most applications will go through the university portal, right? And going through that portal is where you have to submit all your documents, like your personal statement, your proposal, and all of this, right? And if you have no idea what you're working on, you can't write a proposal. But the only way you get to know what you're writing a proposal is by meeting the professor, interacting with them, discussing. So if anything, the professors also want you to work with them. So they will help you out with writing a proposal, right? They won't tell you what to write, but they'll give you resources. Like, okay, look at these papers, look at this, we can work on something out. So I think it's very important to realize that professors need students as much as students need the professor. And that's why you're emailing them to work with them, not work under them. And uh, so that's why you reach out to them. You want to work with them. You want to discuss. You want to talk about work and see. And a lot of times, this has happened to a few friends of mine as well. Like when we come to funding, right? And like if the professor is interested to work with you and the professor has funding, they will help you a lot to get in. Like they want you to join them as well. But the occasional case can come up where the professor wants to work with you, but doesn't have the funding, right? And if you self-fund, it's going to be really expensive. and you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself financially. You'd be like, okay, I have to pay this like thousands of pounds for the tuition fee for every year. You're going to try to minimize all other costs. You would you which is going to have a ripple effect. Like, you're going to eat lower quality food. You're going to force yourself to skip meals because you want to save money. You do all of these things, which is like, again, that comes up at a later part, but at the same time it puts a lot of pressure on you. But there are cases of private funding, right? And what private funding just means is, like Ullas said, there's funding that comes from EPSRC and the research councils, and sometimes even from industry. Like, when you work in biotech or another industry dominated fields, you can have a lot of funding from the um, in the from the from industry as well. But like, there's a lot of funding that comes from private funding, and private funding is what actually, well, I call it private funding, but it's mentioned in the slides as scholarships or special scholarships, right? You can have the most common example I can give, like the most well-known example, is like the Gates Cambridge Foundation, right? So when you apply to Cambridge, you have a special option in your application itself to apply for the Gates Cambridge fellowship, which is which is only for students trying to do a PhD. And the whole point is, like, if the professor or the university is not funding the student, they will fund the student. You'll be recognized as a Gates Cambridge scholar. You'll have separate things that happen. Like, you will be essentially, like, it's like your funding comes from somewhere else, which means you're affiliated to another institution, which can be sometimes more sort of prestigious, right? You can have Commonwealth fellowships, like, and this is especially relevant for us because we're a part of the Commonwealth, right? And Commonwealth fellowships, you can actually get them when you're still in India applying for abroad, right? And especially in the UK. So I think Commonwealth Fellowship is a very prestigious one as well. Like, and you're not only like, and you're also funded by the Indian government itself, right? And you also get a lot of pride with that. You have a lot of Commonwealth Scholar events that's very good for networking as well. And there are multiple things. You have the Inlax Foundation that's also back home, and you can also have a lot of private funding from here. Like, you have, I think there's a Hastings scholarship. It depends. Different fields have different things, but when you reach out to the professor doesn't have funding, but the professor is willing to help you with private funding. Then what happens is, and this happened to my friend. She didn't have, like, her professor didn't have funding, but then they managed to tailor her proposal to apply for an external fellowship, and so now she actually gets she's funded by a fellowship, and she still works with things. So you're the most helpful person to your PhD application is your own supervisor or your potential supervisor, right? Whether it comes to helping you secure external funding, whether it comes to helping you write a proposal for your university application, or if anything, like, even if they don't have the funding, they might be able to connect you with people who do, right? So I think it's really important once you actually identify your supervisor, email them up and express interest, and we get your foot in the door, and is what I would like to say. And then funding obviously is the next step. You work with the professor to identify a research problem proposal, and then you use that to secure your funding, which can either come from university, or which can come from external fellowships, or it can come from government agencies. It can come from back home. It can come from anywhere across private, right? Um, so yeah, so that's the next step after you identify supervisor. Reach out to them, and once you reach out to them, I think they literally shine a light on your path and say, "Do this."
Okay.
That's what happened to me.
All right. No, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So and Vivek, so
Sure.
I have one thing. So in India, so some of the states will fund their
Yes,
own students basically. So I
Rajasthan
have
as well.
heard of Maharashtra government sponsoring for the PhD. I don't think Karnataka has one, but there are few governments, like few of the state governments also fund. Apart from Indian government also funds some of
Mm,
the overseas PhDs also. Sometimes it's gonna be exchange students also coming. So I have seen multiple
mm,
fundings from our home country. So Apart from that, I have seen like different countries funding, basically China, Iran, and they also do their own funding. So sometimes funding also comes from
Yeah.
India, not just in UK
Okay,
ones.
interesting. I have, I think this will be the last question. We've almost run to 2 hours. So we'll speak about funding and we'll pause in this session and we'll come back another day and cover the rest of the topics.
I
So
think
there is
funding. Um, sorry,
funding
no,
can be a
not to cut
discussion
you off.
of
I
its
just
own,
wanted to
right?
say
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Funding on its own
Funding
can
can be a,
be like
yeah.
a 10-hour session for all you know. Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there are a lot of questions running in my head, and I'm sure the audience as well will have a lot of questions as well. Probably we'll cover that in a little more detail in the next session. But right now, what I wanted to ask was, uh, no, so that so okay. At what point do you decide? Is it the professor who's going to fund you? Is it external agency who's going to fund you? Is there a question of who's going to fund you more? Would you get more money from external? Would you get more money from internal? Can you apply for both? Can you apply for both the
mhm.
professor funding and money from outside, from the state governments, as Ullas was mentioning? So how do you go about, deciding which is the right funding? How do you get the right amount to sustain and complete your program in a good way?
So I mean, just I mean, not to sort of rush into this answer. I think having two sources of funding is never necessary,
Okay.
unless, of course, they're both partially funding you separately. Because um, for one, I think there's the two things. One, you're most anytime you are funded, the intention of the funding is to fully fund. So they will not only pay for the university the fees, they will also give you a stipend, right? And like Ulas mentioned, like you work, anything you get as a TA is additional, right? And most of the stipends that you do get are tax free, right? Because you're a student, it's
Okay.
all tax free stipend. The UKRI minimum stipend in well, in London it's a separate amount, but like for like the rest of the UK, it's like I think like £19,000 for the year, and this keeps increasing, but it's tax free. Um,
Mm.
so most of the time you wouldn't need more than one, and also I think if you are funded by the university, I think you're not eligible for other sources of
Okay.
funding, right? That's one thing. But even if you are, and this is sort of maybe like my moral quandary. I don't think, as someone, you should apply for two of them, because if you do get them both, another PhD student is not getting his or her opportunity because of that. And I think, you know, you like there is no way to say one funding is better than the other, because a funding that give like the Gates Cambridge Scholarship might give you more money, but it's also equally much harder to get. Like you're not there's no thing of like someone's giving more money just because they're better. No, it's also a lot more stringent, because if they have more money, they're probably choosing a lesser number of people to give it to. So I think if you do get one source of funding, that's probably all you need, unless it's only a partial fund, in which case, then yes, you are forced to apply for another funding. But if you do have one source of funding, I think you can make yourself, like you can make it work uh, just on that. But at the same time, things like working as a TA, or like just doing small university roles where they will pay you because it's unionized as well. Like, working in this, like the student union will not let you just do things for free. Working as a TA is really, really good experience, and it is a lot of money if you can actually like if the university is treating their students right. That's a different conversation altogether. But I
Okay.
think one
Right.
source of funding should be enough, and additional things can come from uh, things that you do in the course in the university. It doesn't have to be an entirely other source of funding.
Okay. All right. Now, interesting there. And I think we'll come back to these
So
in a different session. But moving to Ullas, Ullas, you mentioned about the state government funding. Of course, your professor would be funding as well. So when you're applying for a PhD, you've spoken to your professor. So what is your pecking order? So who do you target? Do you target your professor first? you target these external agencies in India first? You target these third private, the additional scholarship, as you have mentioned. So what is your order? How do you go about tackling?
So every funding comes with the conditions. For example, like if you're funded from an Indian government or a state government, the condition is that after you finish your PhD, you need to go back to India. So everything comes with a condition. So it's like if you're funded from a UK, so you don't need to go back to India. That's the first thing. So I just weigh my interest. So based on like what the restrictions are, right? So everything has its own rules and regulations to join a PhD. And just to highlight one point, so funding also has its own name. In UK it's called bursaries. So as Shreyas said, bursaries are not taxed basically, because bursaries you get straight, like without getting a penny cut from it. So funding, bursaries, and financial support all are same. So they have their own different names. So I'm just like telling to the audiences, like bursaries or stipend or funding or financial support, everything is the same word, but it has its own different names. So coming on to like what's gonna be your first, let's say, whether it's an Indian scholarship, Commonwealth scholarship, or university scholarship. So ultimately, I prefer like I should be paid, because obviously it's been a large chunk of money of your life. So 2 crores of a money in Indian rupees, like way too much. Like, so I would say like whatever you get, so just weigh the rules and regulations of it, because and go for what you think is better for you. So that's the first thing. And second thing is like, without funding, don't do your PhD, because it's not worth for like you losing your, like it's not losing your money. It's like if you're getting a loan, or like you get your financial liability for it, or like you'll be spending from your father's money or something. So it's not profitable. So, and your work is anyways gonna be sold to someone in near future. So I would say like you just take your funding. So wherever it's like, you do it without a financial liability.
Okay,
So that's what
no,
I would say.
interesting. All right, we are going to close this session here today, but I will have both our speakers who are with us to kind of give us their final views on, why a PhD, how do you apply the funding, quick answer in maybe a minute or two, your kind of a sales pitch of why a PhD and how to get a funding. 2 minutes to each of you. With Ulas on screen. Ulas, if you can just tell us and the audience in a quick 2 minutes, why do a PhD, how to get funding. Of course, we've gone in depth, but your closing statement on the subject, please.
So as I said before, so PhD is all about like, so I would say like PhD is more about resilience of the work. So resilience, so hard work. So, and second thing is like PhD itself gives you a amount of freedom compared to an industry, because you have so it's not a classical 9 to 5 job. So it's like you'll be working in weekends. So that's also something like I always work on weekends. So it's like you'll be doing additional duties of teaching, and you're gonna get different students. So basically you need to be handling not a customer. So basically you'll be handling students. So it's gonna be something different altogether. I won't say it's weird, but yeah, it's something different. So second thing is like in terms of funding, yes. So whoever is there on the live chat or something, I would recommend you don't support your PhD with your money or taking a loan. So I would recommend you secure some of the funding from different financial institutions rather than burdening yourself. So which gives you a secured future, right? So that's what is going to be the takeaway from my
Very,
side.
very
Thanks.
useful. And last but not least, back to Shreyas. So, Shreyas, would you have done something different to what you have done with your PhD approach? And again, a quick 2 minute summary about why PhD, how do you apply funding? A quick closing statement from you, please.
Yeah. So I think like, if you really enjoy research and problem solving and you know, attempting or like, filling gaps in like research and like, trying to find something new and do something novel or whatever. I think, a PhD is a great opportunity to do all that at what with while also sort of giving yourself enough room to explore your own things. There is a lot of freedom, like last said, that comes with the PhD. But at the same time, it's a different kind of freedom. It's not the kind of free like the undergrad freedom where this is the first. It's like a freedom and responsibility mixed, and and you get to really develop as a person, come into your own. You have a completely different way of looking at things than a lot of people because of your experiences as a PhD a student. And as for would I have done things differently, uh, probably not. For the most part, I think everything I had done before has taught me in some way or the other. If I get to go back and do these things, knowing the exact knowledge that I already do, then yeah, sure, I could skip a lot of it because I've already learned it and come to the part. But I feel like the whole process of going through is where I actually learned how to interact with people in academia better. And once you actually get to know people in academia, oh, everything we think about professors, everything we think about what kind of thing it is to be a PhD student, oh my God, like it's so cliche how they depict it in the movies. And you actually meet us, and we're actually fun, just so you know. Um, and we get to enjoy a lot of things, and you know, uh, it may seem like a very daunting process to do this or even get a PhD, but in reality, it's just you can always structure it to identifying people you want to work with, reaching out to people, and at the end of the day it ends up becoming how well can you actually reach out to people and network, and can you use resources to the potential that they are in order to give yourself the opportunity, to maximize your own exposure to opportunities where you can get a PhD. And so yeah, like uh, and stay funded, right? Stay funded. This because it's just not a it's not a PhD if it's not if you have to have the additional financial burden, because then you're just doing a very expensive academic degree. So yeah, just don't. It's actually not as scary a degree, nor is it as scary a process to find a PhD as it is. Professors and researchers in the field aren't scary either. And once you actually become a PhD student, you realize, it's not as it's actually a very fun, and there's a lot of things to it, but like it's something that will shape your experience personally, and be very close to your heart. So and you get to do great research on the side. So I think it's all in all, it's a bunch of wins.
Excellent. So yes, a PhD has a lot of positives, but of course you need to be watchful in terms of how you go about the process. And as Shreyas last said, don't just do it for the fun because it's a lot of money. So make sure you stay funded. And of course, our experts are there to help you, guide you through the process if and when you need any help. We will come back. We will give you a date of when the next session would be. But I think in the next session, we will touch upon funding a little more. Probably we'll discuss this a little more because it is a very important topic. We will also talk about the structure of a PhD. How long does it take? Can you complete a PhD in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. So how does that work out? How is life during PhD? Are you working hard all through the year? Are you working hard 2 days in a week? Are you having fun like Raj is and studying when you need to study? What's the balance between hard work and leisure as well? Right, so we will talk about all of that in our next session. And I would like to thank all our speakers, Dr. Vadhiraj, Raj, Shreyas, and Ullas. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your valuable knowledge. I do not see any questions from the audience at this moment, but if there are any, I think we will address them offline as well. But thank you again for your time, and we will reconnect in some time very shortly for the next session.
Thank you
so
for
much,
inviting
and
me.
have a good rest of the evening. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for
All
inviting
right.
me to
Thank
this.
you.
Honestly, it was really fun. And hope to see you guys next time.
All right. Thank you. See ya.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.